All right, welcome everyone to a new way to look at your brand, crafting a story your customers care about. Our presenter today is Steve Yastrow. As a reminder, course materials are for personal use only. Next slide. If you could please take a minute to familiarize yourself with the content ownership statement, you'll see this presented throughout our sessions today. Steve Yastrow is the presenter or the author of 3 books. He has an in-depth real-world experience advising hundreds of companies and organizations inform his practical, proven approach to driving business results. He's president of his own consulting firm, Yastrow and Company. As a reminder to our attendees, please enter your questions throughout the session in the Q&A box that is directly on the screen, and we'll address questions throughout the session or at the end, depending on time. And then now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Steve.
Hey, hello everybody. How are you? It's so glad to be here with you. Wish we could be in person, but as we know, we're not in person today. So we'll make the most of being in a virtual setting. And a few things I want to just set up as we get started. A few learning objectives for us. We want to understand the power of what I'm going to call customer-centered brand stories. And you'll see what I mean by that as we move forward. We're going to also learn how customer knowledge is your best competitive advantage. The more you know about a customer, the easier it is to get them to be loyal to you, to buy from you the first time, to stay with you for a long time. And understanding that marketing and sales are more about conversations than one-way messaging and broadcasting. So with that in mind, let's think about a word that really is critical to your success. If you think about what makes your company successful, it isn't just the fact that, okay, we got a new product. Sure, that counts. Or we've created a new marketing program. Okay, that's an ingredient that helps fuel your success. But really, the driver of your success is when people are committed to you. When a customer is so committed to you that they want to use you over the competition. You can introduce a new product, but it doesn't make you any money until customers are committed to buying that product. You can raise your prices, but that doesn't work unless customers are so committed to you, they're willing to pay your prices. And we're going to talk about how we earn that commitment. It was interesting looking at the roster of who's here today. I know there's people from many different companies, associations, et cetera. I noticed that there's a number of people here from NAED, the National Association of Electrical Distributors. And so I was thinking a while ago about an experience that I had with somebody I met when I was speaking at an NAED conference years ago that gets this whole idea of commitment. And this was an electrical distributor. And I think you can all apply this to your jobs. So whatever business you're in, you can apply this, even though it was an electrical distributor. And one of the reasons this company brought me in was, how do we get our customers to give us more business? We all know, I mean, most of our customers don't give us all the business they could. They spread it around to other competitors. So we were doing a research study to figure out how they could get more business from their customers. And I interviewed their, 5 of their customers, first 5, and they're all saying the same thing. Yeah, we spread the business around. We like to use a lot of different suppliers. We'll use the distributor who's closest to the job we have that day. Then about the 5th or 6th customer I interviewed, he said, oh yeah, I asked him about my client. He said, I'll go out of my way to use them. I would use them. You have to twist my arm to not use them. I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. He said, I'll even drive by another company's branch to go buy from, he mentioned my client. I had this image, this guy, this is a company in New England. I imagine this electrical contractor getting up early one wintry, cold, freezing, dark morning. And it's so cold that he's got to scrape the ice off his truck. His coffee steam's coming out, his breath steaming. It's dark, he's got a busy day. But even despite all that, he still drives right past another company's branch, 5 more miles to my client's branch. Why? Because he's committed. And the question is, how do we get people to committed? What is it that makes somebody do that? What would make one of your customers go out of their way to do business with you? And to get a glimpse into what it is that gets people to be committed to us, let's think about what drives commitment. And if you've got a friend who, and this friend tells you that he's really committed to something, what's a better indication of whether your friend is committed to? What he tells you he's committed to, or what he does? And the obvious answer is, if you want to know what somebody really values or they're committed to, don't ask them what they're committed to, watch their actions. Because a true indication of what we really believe is what we do. Our actions are a window into what we believe. I love this quote from one of our great thinkers, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Gave us many great quotes. I love this one. The ancestor of every action is a thought. What that means is if your customers are going to be committed to you, go out of their way to bypass the competition for you, accept your price increases, tell people how amazing you are, it's going to be because they have beliefs about you that are so clear, compelling, and differentiating that they are driven to take those actions. So customer beliefs have everything to do with commitment, which has everything to do with your company's success. So we're going to talk now about what kind of beliefs we're trying to get customers to have about us that do get them committed to us. But I want to introduce a word here that we know is a really important word in business, in marketing and sales, and that's the word brand. And I want to take just a minute to reframe the way we think about our brands that's tied into our narrative today about how we get customers committed to us. There's this tendency to think of our brands as the message we blast out to the world, or our logo, or what we're trying to get the word out about ourselves. But the reality is, every one of your customers in a typical day in America or Canada is bombarded with 5,000 marketing and sales messages. So if we think of our brand just as like sending messages out to the world, we're not resonating with people most of the time, because let's face it, most of those 5,000 messages just don't work. Here's how I want you to think of your brand. I want you to think of your brand as not being what you say you are, but your brand is what your customers think you are. Okay? So to frame up what we're talking about here, the beliefs, the thoughts people have about you are what drive their commitment. And that commitment drives your success. This is tied into your brand, because your brand isn't just your logo, or you're using the right color of Pantene blue or whatever. That's not your brand. Your brand are the thoughts that people have about you. Sure, your logo and your website and all your communications help create those beliefs, but the true measure of your brand isn't what you say you are. It's what are people thinking of you right now at this point in time today. That's what your brand is. So with that in mind, let's talk about what it is we're trying to get people to think about us. What kind of beliefs do we want people to have about us? Now, when we think about the kind of beliefs that really motivate people to take action and commit to our companies, we got to recognize that most of the way marketing and sales looks at this, I think, is misguided. If you look at most companies' websites or their brochures or their sales decks, even their social media posts, you'd think that we want our customers to memorize a lot of bullet points about us. Here are our products and the specs. Here are our number of locations. Here's the facts about when we were in business. But the reality is, human beings do not think in bullet points. Sure, bullet points can be part of what forms our thoughts, but have you ever been motivated by a list of bullet points? Have you ever looked at a list and said, I got to go buy that? No, that's not what happens. So then what is it? What kind of beliefs and thoughts do motivate customers to act and be committed to our companies? Let's think about this. Humans invented language at least 100,000 years ago. Anthropologists disagree. It may have been 500,000 years ago, but let's just say it's 100,000 years ago. Pretty amazing. About 5,000 years ago, humans invented writing. Think about that. What an amazing development when we invented writing. All of a sudden, we could record ideas and transport those ideas to another place or another time. But look what I just said a moment ago. If we invented writing 5,000 years ago, but we invented language at least 100,000 years ago, that means for at least 95% of the time, humans have been able to have conversations, robust, fulfilling, rich conversations. We've not been able to write things down. But during that time, that 95% of the time that we had language that we did not have the ability to write things down, as a species, we had lots of cumulative progress. We created cultures, traditions, religions. Agriculture came before writing did. We started to have city-states before we had writing. So how in the world did we as a group, as large groups, remember things we couldn't write things down? Well, we used stories, myths, legends, folklore, shared narratives that helped us have progress. So even though we couldn't write things down, we used our stories as a way to remember things as a group and to transfer information. And what this means is that humans are wired for stories. We are not wired to memorize bullet points. Even though most marketing is based on lists and copy and things, we're trying to get people to form stories in their minds that are motivating. Why? Because that's how humans think. Now, when people hear me say this, that humans think in stories, your first reflex might be, great, we just got to craft a great story about our company, right? We got to craft a great story about our company. But that's not really true, because if you think about it, whose story does your customer really care about? Your story or their own story? I know it's sometimes a hard thing to admit, but they just really don't care that much about our stories. So much marketing and sales is, let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about us. They just don't care. Sure, they may care about you somewhat, but they care about themselves a whole lot more. So the point is, the story that matters, when we say customers form their motivating beliefs based on the stories they have of us, it's not your story, it's their story. In the story you want have your customers believe about you, you are not the hero. You are not the star of the story. Your customer is. If you think about it, in the story we're trying to create that our customers believe, you are not the hero. You're not Luke Skywalker. Your customer is. What you are is trying to get your customer to see you as the best supporting actor in their story. Remember, your customer doesn't care about your story that much compared to how much they care about theirs. And also, they are much more familiar with their own story. Every human being on the planet, all 7 billion of us, we're walking around with a personal life narrative going on in our brain. I mean, aren't you? Didn't you live your life story yesterday? You went to bed last night. You woke up this morning, your story picked up right where it left off, your life story. Same with your customers. They are living their life story and you're walking in the middle of it. It's the story they are familiar with. It's the story they love, the story they care about. And your goal is to get them to see you as the best supporting actor in their story. Think of it this way. Every customer of yours has a current situation, a set of challenges, or a set of opportunities. And they want to go from where they are today up to here, the new situation they want. If they see you as their best partner, the best supporting actor, getting them from here to here, that's when they commit to you. When they believe in you, when they believe that the story they have about you, the story they have in their mind is one in which you are woven in to be a key player in helping them get what they want, that's when they'll care about you. This raises a very important question. Do you know your customer's story? Do you know what your customers really care about? And this is something that we need to really focus on here, is that the more you learn about your customer, the more you will be able to connect with them. This is just a truism. Think of this. In one sense, your best competitive advantage is the knowledge you have about your customers. Let's take an advantage. I know there's people, let's take an example, excuse me. I know there's people here from many different job roles. I looked at the list. We've got people in marketing, we've got some people in sales. And let's think of a sales example for a minute here. Let's say you are competing with 2 of your competitors for a new customer's business. And your 2 competitors go in to see this customer before you, and they have very well crafted, very thorough presentations about their credentials, their product line, what it's like to do business with them. And they do a great job of explaining who they are and what they can do. You go in, or a salesperson for your company if you're not in sales, and instead of, you spend a little time talking about your company and your products, but you spend more time hearing about them and learning about this customer. Who's going to have the competitive advantage? You are, because you will be able to take that knowledge of the customer, understand their story, and then help them see how you can be the best supporting actor to get them to get what they want. What it makes us realize here is that if we recognize the more we learn about our customer, the more we'll be able to connect with them and earn their commitment. Marketing and sales are conversations. They're not broadcasts. We got to read, this is a very important thing to think about. There's this tendency, I remember when I first got into marketing, it's like, I'm getting the word out. One of my first marketing jobs was producing a brochure for vacations. We're getting the word out, listing out all the information on our vacations. And of course, that was an important part of our marketing. But in reality, when people committed to us, it's when we were able to have a conversation with them to find out what they want and adapt it to them. Now you may be thinking, well, wait a minute. I have to do all this marketing to people. I have 3,000 customers I have to send mailings out to. Sure, that's true, but recognize this. The core foundation of our communications with customers, we can't look at it as being these mass communications. Every time you communicate to more than one person at a time, you're actually making a compromise. Think about that. And imagine a salesperson talking to a purchasing agent and an engineer at the same time. He or she has to inherently compromise their message because the purchasing agent and the engineer want something different, don't they? So in reality, every time you talk to more than one person at a time, you are compromising your message. We've got this tendency to look at things like Super Bowl ads as the foundation of marketing. They are a complete aberration from what really works. Most companies, that kind of mass marketing has nothing to do with you, so don't look at that. If you think about it, in the history of human communication, isn't the Super Bowl ad one of the weirdest things you can imagine? One entity talking to 100 million people at one time? That's not how we really communicate. So I know you need to often send the same message to multiple people, but realize that's a compromise that is a necessary evil. What you want to think about is anytime you can engage a customer in a way that you learn about them, so you can personalize for them, you have the ability to help them see you as the best supporting actor in their story. I like to think of this concept this way, marketing and sales being conversations. I wrote a book called Ditch the Pitch. It was the third book I wrote, and it's basically about this. Anytime you craft a message before you know what the customer really is thinking, or before you know what their story is, you're likely to miss the mark. So yes, it's necessary to do marketing communications. It's necessary to sometimes talk to more than one person at a time, but that is not the foundation of your communications. Those are necessary evils that support your communication. What you want to think about is how to be personalized as often as possible. When I look at the types of companies here today, that fits you. Nobody here is really a mass marketer. All of you, if you think about it, your most important marketing and sales events happen one customer at a time. Your most important branding happens one customer at a time. So let's use that as the foundation, and everything else where we have to communicate with more than one person at a time is support that complements the rest of those personalized communications. So a few things to think about. Can you orient your communications that earn customer commitment in marketing and sales? Can we think about, okay, how do we gather input before we deliver output? Most marketing and sales is let me deliver my message to you and then get your feedback. Whenever possible, we want to flip that around 180 degrees and try to get input from the customer before we provide output. So a few things there. How can you collect better information about your customer? In a marketing sense, are there ways to collect information? In a sales sense, or anytime, customer service, I know there's customer service people here today. Anytime you're with a customer, be in input mode. Be curious. The more information that you collect, the more you can understand their story and personalize the story for them. One thing that I like to teach people in their one-on-one communications with customers, say less to notice more. The less you're talking, the more you can learn from your customer. And if you are paying attention and you are curious, your customers will hand you gifts at every moment. They'll say, this is what's important to me. This is what I care about. So to sales or customer service or a one-on-one context, that makes sense. But even in your marketing, can you say less and set up your marketing to notice more about your customers? Because the more you notice, the more you learn, the more you can personalize the story for the customer, the more you can figure out how to weave yourself into their story so they can see you as the best supporting actor, which is what's going to help them believe that you can help them get what they want. Remember, people don't buy from you because of what you sell. People don't buy from you because of your products and your services. They buy from you because your products and services make them better off. Think about that. It's not because of what you offer. It's because of how they are better off when they work with you. And so the more you understand about them, the more you can understand what it is that they define as being better off. And as we've said, our customers, we just got to face it. They care about their own stories more than they care about us. So if they care about themselves more than us, who should we talk about? Us or them? We want to focus the conversation on your customer. We want to focus on their story. Make it about them as much as possible. And of course, if you're printing a brochure, you can't put their story in there. You can put generalizations of it. Realize the brochure is only one part of that communication. The rest of the times you interact with that customer, you will have opportunities to gain information, because we're not mass marketers, most of us. We have our most important marketing and sales events one customer at a time. What you want to do is learn about their story and then take threads of your story and weave your stories together. The way we get our customers to see us as the best supporting actors in their stories is not just by telling them our story and hoping that they do the heavy lifting of connecting our story to theirs. It's by learning about their story and then weaving the threads of our story in one at a time. And so as we get into Q&A, think about that. What are some of the things that you want to learn about your customer, and what are parts of your story that you can connect to what they care about? Now, if you think about it, most of the stories in our lives are co-created with other people. I mean, you think for a minute of one of your best friends. You have a story of your relationship together. It wasn't like one of you told the other person, oh, here's what our relationship's going to be like. You had many experiences with that person. And through those experiences, you had shared narratives, shared experiences, shared challenges, shared joys. And because of that, you co-created a story. Now, I don't mean we're trying to be best friends with our customers. What I'm trying to do is look at this basic foundation of human relationships and conversations and realize that most of the stories we have about our relationships with people are not just told one way. They're co-created through interactions. And the same thing can happen with your customers. Every time you have an interaction with a customer, you have an opportunity to co-create the story with them, to co-create it in a way where they start to see what they do is good for me. I can be better off if I commit more to this company. That's how we get people to believe that we are the best supporting actor in their story, not by telling them we can be, but by interacting with them and co-creating stories. And again, I'll say it again, not every opportunity for communication is an opportunity for direct personal interaction, but so many are, and they should be the foundation. Everything else is the support. Everything else, our brochures, our website, they're like the backdrop in a movie scene. What really counts is what the characters are saying on screen. Think about that with your customer interactions. It's those human interactions one-on-one that are the meat, the most important ways people form beliefs about you. Everything else is support. I'll talk in a few minutes about the role of us marketing leaders in doing that, but recognize this is just the way it works. You know, I do a lot of research with my clients' customers to try to understand what it is that helps them believe in one company versus another. And the sad truth is that usually when I find out what makes people committed to one company or another, it's usually not the marketing materials, their support. You know, my first book, Brand Harmony, I had a chapter in there calling it Marketing's Copernican Moment. If you know what I mean by that, Copernicus, the philosopher, astronomer, who first was the one to posit that the earth revolves around the sun, not the other way around. Think about that. Before that, we thought the earth was the center of the universe and everything revolved around us. Copernicus brought us down off our pedestal that we're not the center of the universe. We're a speck. We're revolving around something bigger, the sun, which is part of something even bigger. Marketing's Copernican moment is recognizing that what we do in our marketing materials is really the support. It's not the most important thing that makes people believe in us. We have a role, which I'll get to in a minute, for those of us in marketing. That's very important. We have to realize that our customers just aren't valuing these marketing communications the way we often do. What we want to do when we co-create a story with our customer is to get them to have beliefs where they say this: I get it. I understand what you're all about. I want it. What you offer is incredibly important to me, and I can't get it anywhere else. What you do can't be accessed with any of your competitors. Think about that. In fact, I encourage you to write those 3 statements down. They're very helpful. What's it going to do to get your customer to say, I get it, meaning I understand you. I want it. What you do is really important to me, and I can't get anywhere else. I can only get it from you, not from your competition. And you can't get people to believe those things just by talking at them. Let's look at it this way. I get it. I guarantee you, if I were to interview 100 of your customers, there would be 100 different things, maybe many more, but every one of those 100 people would misunderstand different things about your company. Isn't that true? Think for a moment. What are some of the I get it problems your company has? What are things that your customers don't understand about you? Therefore, you need to be in dialogue with a customer to find out what it is that they don't understand. Yes, you can have FAQs. Yes, you can have general copy that addresses the common things that people don't understand about you. Of course you can do that. But in a one-on-one context, you can find out what somebody doesn't understand. I want it. You can understand, what does this one particular customer really care about us? I can't get it anywhere else. What do this one customer, what do they think about the competition? Where do they think their competition's advantages or disadvantages are? We want to co-create stories in a personal context with our customers whenever possible, because remember, it's their story that counts. So we say this, what is the role of marketing leaders? And again, I know there are people from marketing on this call. There are presidents, general managers, salespeople, customer service. This applies to all of us, but I want to address it from a marketing perspective. So even if you're not in marketing, this is relevant to you, but especially if you're in marketing. Your role in marketing, as I keep saying, marketing's Copernican moment, and our brochures and websites don't count as much, their support, doesn't mean that what we do isn't important. What marketing needs to do is reframe its role, not as the lead communicators, but as the orchestra conductors. Your customers are paying attention to hundreds, maybe thousands of interactions they have with your company over the course of time. And the question is, do all of those interactions blend to communicate one message? The way in an orchestra, all the instruments are playing different things, but it comes together in harmony, so it's easy and pleasurable to listen to that orchestra play. This is a concept I call brand harmony. Your role in marketing, and by the way, those of you who aren't in marketing, you're part of this too, is to ensure that all the messages that customers are perceiving as they interact with your company, whether it's interacting with your products, your services, your customer service, your accounting department, your marketing, your sales, your operations, that all of those interactions blend to communicate a unified customer experience and a unified narrative. So all of us play a role in this. And those of us in marketing realize that what we do in marketing communications is part of the orchestra, but we still got to be thinking of the entire spectrum of experiences people have with us. So what marketing leaders want to do is say this: our job can be defined, what is the core story we want our customers to believe about us? In other words, how can we be a best supporting actor to our customers? Understand what the essence of your story is. What's the core story of how we really help people go from here to here? Then share threads of this story with everyone who is customer facing in your company. Think of all the people in your company who communicate with customers. Your salespeople, of course, customer service, people in your accounting department. Do you have delivery drivers? Do you have project managers? Anybody in your company who communicates with the customer should understand threads of your story. If somebody says, well, what's our elevator pitch? You don't want to have an elevator pitch. What you want to have is granular threads of your story that people in your company are trained to integrate into their conversations with people so that they can help weave a story where the customer really, really cares about your company and is committed to you and understands how you can help them. This idea of weaving your story together is something that everybody in your company can do. Salespeople, especially important for you. As you are listening to a customer and learning about them, you can take threads of your story and weave your message in. You tell somebody, you show them a sales deck with 10 slides of 10 bullet points each. How many of those 100 bullet points can they remember? But if you take one of those bullet points, a thread of your story, and weave it in at the right moment, That's when the customer remembers it. That's when the customer understands how it can help them. And we want to ensure that the entire customer experience is unified. We're creating brand harmony. Does every touch point with your customer reinforce the story you want your customers to believe? So let's just review a few points. And I want to encourage you to share your questions and answer. I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A today, which we're going to be able to do in just a moment here. What we talked about is how what drives your results is when your customers are committed to you. When you get commitment, that's what makes people drive past the competition to go to you. Ignore the competition, return your phone call or email, but not return the competition's. Accept your price increase. Buy more products from you. Buy your service contracts. All these things you want customers to do are driven, or the drivers of your success, but they are driven by the beliefs people have about you. As I quoted Emerson, the ancestor of every action is a thought. When customers have beliefs about you that are clear, compelling, powerful, differentiating, that's when they'll believe about you. That's when they'll commit to you. So what is the nature of these beliefs they have about you? It's not a list of bullet points. Human beings don't think in bullet points. We think in stories. Remember, as I said, 95% of the time that humans have had language, we've not been able to write things down. Writing is new. So how do we remember things as a group? Stories, myths, legends, narratives. So because human beings are wired for story, you want to help people believe stories about you. But it's not just about you. It's their story, what they believe about you is that you can help them get what they want. Your customer, like every human being, is living their life story, their life narrative all day long. They care about that narrative. They're familiar with it. So instead of having them jump out of their story and jump into yours and look at your About Us page or your pitch deck, no, you want to weave yourself into their story. Be the best supporting actor in their story. The example I gave you, in the story your customer believes, they're the hero. You aren't Luke Skywalker, they are. You're Yoda, the partner, the best supporting actor, getting them what they want. Marketing and sales are not broadcasts. They are conversations. Anytime we have to broadcast, it's a necessary evil. It's support. What really counts is recognizing that your customers form these beliefs one interaction at a time. And so when you manage those interactions to be able to help customers believe that you can help them get what they want, that's when they create a story that really matters. Your story doesn't matter to them that much. Their story is what counts. So this affects all of us in customer-facing roles. Those of you who are in marketing, I'll just put this graphic back up on the screen again. Those of you in marketing, you're the orchestra conductors, helping people get what they want, helping people in your company be prepared to communicate the story one thread at a time, and ensuring that the entire customer experience is one of brand harmony that helps people believe that you can help them get what they want. So I'd love to take your questions now. I wanted to leave, we got about a little more than 15 minutes for questions, which is great. Please shoot them at me.
Great, thank you so much. Just a reminder to our attendees, please answer or input your questions into the Q&A box that is embedded directly on the live screen instead of the chat feature, and we'll go ahead and get those answered live. Steve, just to start you off, I've got one question that says, have you ever been in a difficult relationship with a customer? And if so, what do you recommend to go about fixing that?
It's a great question because we're all going to have difficult relationships with customers. Like, let's say you see a customer isn't committed to you or their business drops. Remember what I said earlier? Customer knowledge is your best competitive advantage. And I said, think input before output. What you want to do is to go into input mode. What can I learn about this customer and what they're thinking about me? And there are multiple reasons for that. First of all, we often assume we know why a customer is upset with us, or why there's a difficulty, but we really don't know. They might not even know fully. They might be irritated, but they haven't really unpacked why yet. They might have some details. So in input mode, you can learn what it is that's really affecting them. And also, when you learn what's affecting them and when you're listening to them, they're gonna feel a lot more heard and be more likely to be willing to get through this problem. You know, I had this job years ago. I was the vice president of resort marketing for Hyatt Hotels out of their corporate office here in Chicago, where I live. I'll tell you, by the time somebody had a complaint with a vacation, let's say a honeymoon in Hawaii, By the time the complaint got to my desk in Chicago, it was less about the complaint than more about the way it was handled. Either that it was handled poorly or, wow, I had this problem and, and Jody handled it wonderfully. Think about that for a moment. The way we handle those things is so critical. And the common thread in that is, do people feel listened to? We can all think about that. So think about what I said. Say less to notice more. Be curious. Input before output so you can learn what it is that's really affecting this particular customer's beliefs and about you.
Great, thanks. Another question that came in. Hi, Steve, thanks for speaking with us today. My question is, do you have any tips or strategies to keep marketing content or stories content consistent, but not repetitive or boring?
Thank you, Connor. It's a great question. So let's think about this. We know that people need repetition, right? People do need repetition and reinforcement. That's what happens. But it doesn't mean that the question needs to be, the content needs to be completely the same thing every time. When you think about the idea of brand harmony, the graphic I put up with the orchestra, brand harmony recognizes that the way people form these stories in their minds is by taking every interaction they have with us and fusing those together in their minds. It's how human beings think. We put together a mosaic of lots of different stones, so to speak, in our minds. So what I like to think about is less about consistency and more about being complementary. Like when I ask, what's a good example of a company that does brand harmony? One examples that come up all the time are Apple or Chick-fil-A. Well, Chick-fil-A doesn't have every sandwich doing the same thing and every communication doesn't say the same thing. Apple, my iPhone and my iPad and my computer and the Genius Bar in the store are different, but they complement each other really well. So think about how things complement versus being consistent. So the way you avoid, you get the benefit of repetition without being boring is to make sure you're telling a little bit of the story at all times, but those pieces fit together like a puzzle. Your customers can only absorb so much information at a time, so you're telling little threads of your story at each interaction. Thanks for that question, Connor.
Great, thanks. One more question here. Which is the best way and the best moments to share those story threads with the customer-facing players in the company?
Thank you, Hector. That's a very good question. How do we, so as I mentioned, you've got many people in your company who are customer-facing. And they all play a role in communicating with customers. And by the way, people behind the scenes do too. People in your warehouse who've never met a customer do impact the customer experience. That might be a topic for another time. It's very important. Let's focus on the customer-facing people now. What I find often is that there's a number of steps to get over to get these customer-facing people to enthusiastically and effectively communicate the threads of our story. One is that they maybe haven't recognized the role they play in helping customers form beliefs. In fact, I'm working now with an insurance firm where the CEO brought me in and we're doing lots of communication training with their customer-facing operations people. Who people you call if you got a claim, if your car gets damaged, or if a commercial customer, if a truck gets damaged. How do you teach them how to realize that you're not just servicing the business here, you're actually part of the brand and the communication and getting people to love us. So one thing is to help people realize that. And what I find is that people are very open to that concept. Anybody who's customer facing your company, your delivery drivers, if you got delivery drivers, they just got to invite them into that conversation. The first point is get them to understand that. Next, in terms of sharing the threads of the story, I find that one of the best ways to get people to believe in these kind of things is to involve them in conversations. Don't just do a marketing presentation or a company presentation, say, here's the threads of our story, go out and communicate them. Get with your employees. I'm guessing there's companies in here, there might be some bigger companies, but let's say you got, I'll make it up, 200 employees, fewer or more, you can still do the same thing. Get those 200 employees, as an example, in, I don't know, what have you got, 15 groups of 15 people, and brainstorm with them and say, okay, here's what we want people to believe about us. Here's the threads of our story. Let's talk about some real life scenarios about how we could use these threads in real situations. If a customer said this, what part of our story could you weave in there? So interacting with people as opposed to just telling them is a great way to get your employees to believe in it. Like I said with customers, broadcasts don't work as well as conversations do. Same thing with these customer facing people in your team. Don't just broadcast the messages at them, involve them in conversations. Be willing to engage them in some role playing. I find that employees love doing this because it's like it gives them some more meaning in their job and helps them realize how they can be more effective.
Okay, great, thank you. Looks like that's all the questions we have right now. We'll give everyone a few more minutes if they think of anything else. Steve, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with everyone?
Sure, definitely. One thing that I'd like you to think about is that when you think about what makes people, these stories people have about you, I talk about creating a shared story, which means when your customer thinks about what they need, you are woven into that story. So when they think about a problem they have or an opportunity, you're part of it, that you're part of them getting what they want. Now, that means they truly do think of you as a partner. I like to think of this, of the concept of a relationship as what I call a we relationship. A relationship where your customer doesn't think of you as them, him, her, but they think of you together as a partnership. They think of you as we. One thing you also want to communicate to all of your customer-facing team members as you teach them how to communicate these threads of your story is that you have an opportunity in every single interaction you have with every customer to have that customer leave that interaction feeling more of a we relationship with your company than they had before that interaction. And so it's very critical to realize that customer commitment and the stories they have, when that story is about their relationship with you, just as instead of just the things you do for them, that's a much more compelling, motivating framework for the customer to have, that relationship they have with you. So as you train your customer-facing people to communicate these threads of the story, also get them to realize that they have this wonderful, amazing opportunity to have relationship building encounters, relationship building moments where the customer can walk away from this phone call or this in-person meeting or this Zoom meeting feeling a little bit closer to your company. When you do that, that will go a lot to helping form those motivating stories in the customer's minds, because relationships are usually more differentiating than our products or services.
Okay, great, thank you. It looks like that's all the questions we had come in. Do you have any contact information in case anyone wants to get in touch with you after this event?
Sure. I am one of those people with one of the easiest email addresses in the world. I'll put it up on the screen here. My email address is just oh wait, it's right there, excuse me. Yes, I do, 1 second.
Okay.
It's on the screen there. 1 second, give me 1 moment.
Yeah, no problem.
My email address is right here on the screen where it says final thoughts, where I left you here. The humans thinking stories, not bullet points. I already reviewed this. Your customer doesn't care about your story that much. You want to create that shared story. So there's my email address. I invite anybody, if you think of some questions later, this often happens. I get lots of emails after I give talks. Hopefully that's because we're provoking people to think and think about ways they can improve their business. So if you're thinking of some things later, please send me an email. I'll be very happy to answer your questions.
Great, thanks so much, and thank you for a wonderful presentation today. That concludes today's session. Thanks for your time.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.